Hello, Internet, and welcome back to another episode of Meet La Prensa. Today we have a very special episode. I've been asking a lot of questions. We're actually going to have somebody else ask questions of me tonight. We are going to introduce our new correspondent for Meet La Prensa, Karina Gutierrez. Welcome, Karina. Welcome to the team.
Thank you. Thank you, Pablo. Good to see you.
So just so the viewer knows, I haven't been told what any of these questions are going to be. Karina and I are old friends. So Karina, take it away.
Yeah, so last time I interviewed you was about 5 years ago on the Swamp podcast, and we were just coming out of the WikiLeaks email dump, where you actually became a viral internet celebrity, best known for dropping F-bombs in official DNC emails. So at the time, you spoke a lot about the challenges and struggles that came from having that type of fame. So 5 years later, what are your thoughts on viral internet fame?
Well, I have to correct the record because the reason I had viral internet fame was because I wasn't dropping F-bombs on official DNC emails. People were dropping F-bombs about me. And if there's one lesson that I learned from that experience, it's that the internet appreciates people who deliver. So one of the things that we learned from having our emails shared all over the internet was that there was a lot of office politics going around on these official work channels that came out. And a lot of these office politics had to do with me. So I think that one of the things that I learned from the experience is that the internet forgives you when you deliver. So delivering is important. And by delivering, I mean, when you say you're going to do something, you actually do it. Reddit in particular as a platform really will get into the weeds, we'll get into the details. And so as somebody who has been doxxed, as you say, when my emails were shared, or my emails were stolen by the Russians and leaked to WikiLeaks and then published in the New York Times or wherever they were published, is that, when you're writing work emails, always write your work emails, always do your communications, assuming that, they could be on the front page of the New York Times. And when that happens, make sure that you're doing your job and doing it well, because the internet will see these things and they will recognize that, you're somebody who delivers.
Well, you were also pretty lucky because the coverage of your emails painted you out to be a hellraiser, but also a hero. Whereas a lot of people were not so lucky. There were some really dangerous situations that came from the WikiLeaks email dump. The other thing you did differently than some of the other characters involved was that you spoke to various media outlets and owned that narrative. But that also contributed to the fame and the attention that you got for it. So if you could go back, would you do anything differently?
No, definitely not. I posted through it. When you wake up and all of your work emails are on the internet and, people are starting to say, wow, this guy's really awesome. What are you going to say? Tell them you're not awesome? Of course, you're going to start sharing when GQ magazine is calling you an internet folk hero, and then the Washington Post, the New York Magazine, and all these other outlets are following. I'm not somebody who was raised so foolishly humble so as to turn away that amazing free attention. I think it was actually you, Karina, who said at the time in that interview that becoming sort of internet famous overnight is every millennial's dream. And I think that one of the interesting things that we see now, that the most popular career choice for Gen Z, they're saying, is to be a YouTube star. So it's interesting that we find ourselves here on YouTube in this forum 5 years later with the experiences that we've had, since.
We've come full circle.
We've come full circle from the swamp to the Meet La Prensa to, and your new segment, K-Chats.
Yes, more coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing you spoke about was kind of the toxic environment that you experienced at the DNC, particularly as a Hispanic employee. What do you think needs to be done there to clean that place up? Or do you think that things have changed and things are better there?
The measure of a good party chair, whether it's a Democrat party chair or a Republican party chair, is how many elections you win or how many elections that you make the other side lose. So given the last election, the gains that Democrats made, at least in the Senate and in some state party races, I think that the DNC is doing a lot better job. Can it do better? Of course. There were losses in the House, and I think that's a big problem, especially if that is a bellwether moving toward the 2022 midterm, because I think that Democrats, and not just Democrats, but progressive Americans progressive political voters writ large expect they expect the Biden administration to be to have the kind of sort of reform, maybe even transformational mandate to change things. So if they're unable to not just reverse the tide of the catastrophe that they're inheriting from 4 years of disgrace by the Trump administration, then yeah, like they're going to have to answer for that, because not only do they have to reverse the tide, bring it back to like sort of neutral, if you will, but they also have to enact a progressive agenda to avoid, you know, progressive members of Congress and other politicos, like say the Squad, from completely blocking the agenda and primarying their more moderate candidates in important races throughout the country. The last thing we would want to see if you're a Democrat and while the Republican Party appears to be in free fall, the last thing you would want to do is shatter as a Democratic Party, because if anything, that's exactly what caused the rise of Donald Trump 4 years ago when we last spoke on air.
When we last spoke, yeah. So lastly, I just want to ask you, who do you think are the most underrated people in media?
So I think that, like, if we're talking about the most underrated people in media, I think that, like, sort of, you know, we asked this question to first-time guests, and now I feel like I am kind of like a first-time guest on our own show, which is amazing. I love being on this side of the chair because this is a question that I really wanted to answer. But I think that, like, so the question we usually ask is, who are the most underrated workers in the American newsroom? But I think that who are the most underrated workers in media specifically allows us the chance to also talk about the new White House communications team, which is more Latino or Latinx than any White House communications team I've seen in government ever, right? Really, and they're, you know, Latinos are taking over in the West Wing. I'm talking about Pili Tobar. I'm talking about Jenny Molina. I'm talking about Muriel Sayans, I think is her last name, who's now the director of broadcast media for the White House. And, you know, she's the White House booker. And that's such a cool thing to have a Latina there. So I hope that, like, you know, as the administration develops, that these players are going to continue to rise. You know, as you know, Karina, better than I do, you know, the people who kind of turn the lights on in a new administration are usually out the door long before they turn the lights off. But to answer the question, sorry, of who would be the most underrated workers in the American news business, which I actually prepared for, I would have to say Rafael Bernal and Julio Varela. I think, or sorry, Rafael Bernal from The Hill and Nick Valencia from CNN are both two reporters on the sidelines. And I think that if anything defines somebody who's underrated is the gulf that they leave, the void that they leave when they are sidelined or when they are out of the business for a few weeks. In Nick's case, he's taking paternity leave after becoming the father to a beautiful baby boy. And in Rafael's case, he's still waiting to have his work visa reinstated that Stephen Miller took away from him during the last presidency. There's also Lori Lizarraga, Kristen Aguirre, and Sonia Gutierrez, three women mentioned in Lori's testimonial in Westward about basically getting moved on and replaced by white workers at their news station, station number 9 in Denver. We're actually going to have Lori on next week to interview her about that on Tuesday. So we're really looking forward to having Lori on to discuss this. David Artavia, the editor of Out magazine, he just had this huge story on the front page of the magazine, the front page this week, about the policy changes in the U.S. relationship with Venezuela. That's really exciting stuff. I can't wait to read and share that tomorrow. Fernando Hurtado, congratulations to him on his promotion at NBC News. Sandy Garcia, I think if there's one person who's super underrated at the New York Times, it's Sandy Garcia. She's the best writer they have. In my opinion, she's the best writer they've had since David Carr, which is high praise because David Carr is one of my heroes, but so is Sandy Garcia. Keep it up, Sandy. Fidel Martinez at the Los Angeles Times. His newsletter, Latin X Files, is one that we definitely want to work with. We're really excited about. And I think that, like, you know, from what I hear, it's doing really well in terms of signups. I can't wait to see it grow. And hopefully, like, you know, we can maybe participate with it enough if he's kind enough to collaborate with us. Julio Varela from the Futuro Media Group. He's actually a friend of show. He was our second friend of show after Rafael. This guy does it everything. If there's anybody who you like, you know, whose impact anywhere he goes is transformational to a news organization for the better in terms of ethics, in terms of content, in terms of standards, in terms of timelines, in terms of project management, it's Julio Varela. Asar, Nassim, and the rest of the team at the Washington Post PR. These are bookers. I have a certain place in my heart for bookers. They're the Washington Post booking team. So for the last 8 years now, the Washington Post, you've seen them on every show in the land. These are the brown women, they're the non-white women behind that push. And lastly, I would have to say Sergio Picaña. I will leave a link in the description to this video to Sergio Picaña's latest in the Washington Post opinions, which is an illustrated piece that's just brilliant. It really is sort of, it's one of those, he's an illustrator, and he does a brilliant illustration about the unclogging of the Suez Canal from the ship there. So those would be my most underrated workers in the American news business.
Well, that's a great list of talent. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's also the first time I've ever heard a Hispanic use the term Latinx. So that was great too. And I just want to thank you for your time today. We've really appreciated these insights and can't wait to see what's next from Meet La Prensa.